Hi, this is Joe again with another review. And for the sake of this video, I know lately I've been doing shows reviewing WrestleMania, and I'm pretty much going to stop doing it after 10 because the wrestling has gone down quite a bit. At least for me anyway. So for this video, I am going to just keep up with the WrestleMania theme. But I'm going to be talking about something that takes place the night before WrestleMania, which is the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony. And you say, oh, what are you talking about that? Well, this is really going to be a tribute to one particular wrestler that's going to be in the Hall of Fame class of 2015. And that is the Macho Man, Randy Savage, which is a wrestler that's taking way too long. He should have been in there at least 10 years ago, in my opinion, when he was still alive. Because Randy Savage died a couple of years ago from a heart attack while he was driving his car. Randy Savage was one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. And unlike most wrestlers who just work for years to get recognized in the wrestling business during old territory days, and then they finally get recognized and all that stuff. But most people jump into the wrestling territories and try and get noticed and work hard and get noticed. For the sake of Randy Savage, who actually was an athlete. He was a minor league outfielder, and I believe an outfielder was in the Cardinals organization. He did bat about like 290 average lifetime in the minor leagues. He did play for like 2 or 3 years, and then he decided to follow in the family business because his father owned one of the territories in the Midwest, and his brother was Leaping Lenny Poffo, because that's actually Randy's last name is Poffo and not Savage. Because a lot of wrestlers here they change their names. Not all of them, but quite a few of them do. Like Ted DiBiase, for example, he kept his name. Majority of the wrestlers changed the name, like Randy Savage did, and he had the name the Macho Man since the beginning. Well, Randy Savage was working in one of the territories before he got into the WWF. He met and married the woman who will eventually become his manager in the WWF, which was Elizabeth Willett. Who of course is one of the most beautiful women that I've ever seen. I mean, she was drop dead gorgeous. I mean seriously, she could have been a model. That's how beautiful she was. In the body she had, damn. Randy Savage was a lucky guy to meet her, because she was an actual announcer in the territory that Randy Savage started out in, and of course they moved on to the WWF in about 85. And they around the time that I started watching wrestling, that's when Randy Savage started. And I do remember one of the first bits he did start off as a heel when he was in the WWF. And then when he remember this one particular time, one of the first things I do remember him doing was he announced who was going to be his manager. He was actually just about at that time in WWF for a few years, until the early 90s, when the manager started leaving for WCW or just leaving the wrestling business altogether. Pretty much every single heel that was in the WWF had a manager, and so there was a big hype on who was going to be Randy Savage's manager. And of course they had, in the WWF at the time, they had a whole slew. They had Bobby Heenan, they had Jimmy Hart, they had Classy Freddie Blassie, you had Luscious Johnny Valiant, you had Mr. Fuji. You didn't have Slick then yet, until about maybe like a year and a half or 2 years later. So you didn't have Slick then. So what happened was that Randy Savage had a match against one of these slub mat wrestlers that was doing back in the old TV taping days, where they would tape in an arena, like on a college campus or like a Hershey Park or arena or whatever, or wherever. And he said, one of these wrestlers will purposely lose to one of the heels or baby faces. And after that match, Randy Savage was going to announce who was going to be his manager. So he had all the managers in the ring. He said, "Oh no, I'm not going to pick somebody who's luscious or who's classy or wears a tuxedo." Pointing to Mr. Fuji or somebody with a brain, Bobby Heenan. And he was eliminating them one by one. Here's who my manager is going to be. And he put a spotlight on the door. Here comes Elizabeth. And I go, wow, look how beautiful this girl is. Holy shit, And they're going, holy cow, look at this woman, And so her name is Miss Elizabeth. And she was always there. And unlike the other managers in the WWF, where they all would interfere in one way or another, Elizabeth, and also to Randy Savage's credit too, they never put her in physically into a match. What I mean is, she wouldn't interfere with the referee or the other wrestlers. Sometimes, occasionally, we have a wrestler go, hey, look at Elizabeth, look at Hattie, do like construction workers do every time they see a pretty girl walk by. Say, hey, Elizabeth, hubba, do all that sexual harassment type comments. That's about as far as it went. I'm trying to flirt with Elizabeth in some way. But Elizabeth herself wouldn't interfere in any of the matches. But there was a time before Randy Savage turned face, where Randy would hide behind her skirt. But other than that, she didn't really interfere in any of them, get physically involved with the match, pulling the wrestler's leg out from under him and Savage would pin him, stuff like that. She was just standing in the corner, looking real meek looking, and trying to meekly look in the corner with a concerned look, and maybe clapping her hands and have a concerned look on her face, and maybe say, "Come on, Randy," a woo for Randy, or give some positive feedback to Randy Savage. Come on, Randy, you'll beat this guy or whatever. And then, of course, his first WrestleMania, which I mentioned in my WrestleMania review series, was in WrestleMania 2 against George the Animal Steel for the IC belt. And that rivalry with George Steele lasted for a while, because George Steele had the heart, like anybody would, for Elizabeth. And he will follow her. And in one particular match, after the WrestleMania 2 match, George Steele got a few rematches with Saturday's main event, and at one point he actually kidnaps her, picks her up, carries her off into back. And there was also at the time when Randy Savage had the thing with Ricky Steamboat and crushed his dynamics. So Randy Savage got distracted by Ricky Steamboat, and here goes George the Animal Steel. He grabs Elizabeth and picks her up, and like King Kong pretty much, and carries her off. And then they have a rivalry there for a while with the Animal Steel, with Elizabeth and all that stuff, which of course carried over to WrestleMania 3, to one of the greatest matches of all time. And then, of course, after when Randy Savage lost to Ricky Steamboat in WrestleMania 3, you really didn't see Savage all that much. I think he did have a couple rematches with Ricky Steamboat, here and there in some arenas. But then the big rivalry came, at least one. Other than Ricky Steamboat, I think this was the second best rivalry that Randy Savage had, and the first real rivalry that Randy had when he turned face. Because I think he kind of turned face with Elizabeth a little bit, even though he did some dirty stuff. Because he was a heel, and he did get some boos for what he did to Ricky Steamboat and everything. But I think when he sort of turned face and got a lot of sympathy from the fans is when he lost to Steamboat in WrestleMania 3, because he did such a great match in there. And I think a lot of fans were cheering just for him. Not only for Steamboat in that match, but also for him as well, because he gave such a terrific performance. The next rivalry the Savage had was with the Honky Tonk Man. The Honky Tonk Man beat, like I mentioned in my WrestleMania review series, he beat Ricky Steamboat about 3 months after he won the title from Savage. And that fall, the Honky Tonk Man was hyping himself up as the greatest Intercontinental Champ of all time, because he beat Ricky Steamboat and nobody expected him to win, so I'm the greatest champ of all time, IC champ of all time. And that ticked off Savage, because at that time, Savage did have the longest run of an IC champ. He had it for over a year. I think he had it for like the title for like about 13 or 14 months, something like that. And Honky Tonk Man did eventually beat that record because he had the record for 15 months, the title. So he had from March of '87 to August. No, he actually had from June of '87 to August of 1988 when Honky Tonk Man lost the title to the Ultimate Warrior. So he beat Savage's record for by about a month, two at the most. But anyway, he had the longest reign of Savage did at that time. So he was going on and on about how he's the greatest champ, and of course certainly Savage, knowing all previous IC champs, from Tito Santana to Greg Valentine even though Greg Valentine was in the same stable as well, not yet. He was not in the same stable yet with Jimmy Hart and Pedro Morales and all the previous IC champs were all getting all offended. And so Savage challenged Honky Tonk Man for a championship match and Saturday Night's Main Event, which is definitely one of the most better matches they had for Saturday Night's Main Event. Even though it was a disqualification and the Honky Tonk Man being disqualified, but it was up to the interference stuff. It was one of the best matches on Saturday Night's Main Event history. And there was also the match where Honky Tonk Man shoved down Elizabeth because Honky Tonk Man was trying to hit Macho with his guitar. And Elizabeth came in to save him for the moment, and he shoved it down. And he did hit Randy with the hit in the guitar, over the head with the guitar. And there was also the match actually restored the bonding of the Mega Powers with Hulk Hogan saving Randy Savage's butt. And that's when they got a real big face turn for Savage at that point. And they had another match with Macho Man. When Macho Man had another match with the Honky Tonk Man, they won at Saturday's Main Event. I think they had about 3 matches total, including the one or the show where Hogan got screwed out of the title. They had that bit, and of course then you had later on you had the bit of WrestleMania 4 when Savage wrestled 4 times, won the undisputed championship, and then of course he had the bit with Hogan. For WrestleMania 5, and then you had the bit with in WrestleMania 6. He had the rivalry that's when in WrestleMania 5, of course, that's when Savage turned back to heel, and that was the last time he went back to being a heel. He was a heel for like a year, not a year, but like 2 years. He was a heel. Then he became the Macho, beat Duggan, and became the so-called quote-unquote king of wrestling. Then of course he had the match with the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7, which he lost, and he had to be retired. And then you had, I think, really the last really great rivalry that Macho Man had in WWF, and I feel, with Jake the Snake Roberts, and that's when Savage turned. That's when Jake the Snake turned back to being a heel after being a face for about like 3 years, 3.5, 4 years, because Jake the Snake was a face, and then he turned to being a heel because after when Damien got squashed by an earthquake, so he went back to being a heel because he was upset over it. And for some reason he was in SummerSlam '91, he had the bit with he had the reception for Randy Savage and Elizabeth, even though the two of them were married for years. He did like a wedding for both of them in SummerSlam '91, and that's when you had the reception. And Elizabeth opens up a box, and here comes the Cobra, King Cobra, out of the box, scared the crap out of her. I remember around the same time in September, a few weeks after that incident, that part of the storyline, Elizabeth and the Macho Man were supposed to be doing an autograph signing in Queens College Gymnasium in Queens, New York. But at the last minute, they pulled out of it because of the storyline they had with the SummerSlam angle. Because it was also that time, Macho Man was very protective of Elizabeth, and he really didn't go out on public appearances at all. It's a shame since now she's been dead for 12 years, and it's a shame that how he treated Elizabeth, how jealous of her, how jealous he was, and how protective he was of her. Because I really would have liked to have met Elizabeth and have a picture taken with them and everything else. And Macho Man deprived not only myself but a lot of wrestling fans out of that moment. And that's when I saw the great rivalry there. And then of course you had the match, the Tuesday in Texas match between Randy and Macho Man. I mean Randy and Jake the Snake, and there was a terrific match. It didn't last long. I thought it was going to be like a 20-minute match, but I think Randy won that match about like roughly 10 minutes, 12 minutes tops. But he had a longer interference after the match when Jake gave Randy about like 3 or 4 DDTs and put a snake on and slapped Elizabeth and everything else. And then they had another match on Saturday's main event, and the Undertaker stopped Jake from hitting Elizabeth and Macho Man with a chair. And that's why the rivalry between Jake the Snake and the Undertaker. And that's when Undertaker turned face. But to me, that was really the last really great rivalry that he had. Truly, he did have the rivalry with Ric Flair that led up to the WrestleMania 8 championship match. I mean, it was fine, but it was good. But it was when it started getting a little, wrestling was getting a little silly for me. And then he did have a match with Crush in WrestleMania 10. And not too long after that, that's when Macho Man and most of the wrestlers that I grew up with in WWF left for either retired from wrestling altogether, or ran an independent circuit, or went to WCW. And Macho Man was no different. He went to WCW. He wrestled Ric Flair for a while. He joined the NWO group, led by Hollywood Hulk Hogan when Hogan turned heel. Which I think surprised a lot of wrestling fans when Hogan turned heel. And that was pretty good. Well, then afterwards, after wrestling, of course, when Randy Savage was still in the WWF, I think when he was still in the WWF, he did a commercial for Slim Jim. Slam into a Slim Jim, or whatever the catchphrase was. And of course, Randy Savage, I think he was already retired from wrestling in 2002. He did a cameo, and he did actually have a couple of lines too. In the very first full-length Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire, he was a wrestler called Bonesaw McGraw, and of course he was the wrestler that got his butt kicked by Tobey Maguire. That's when Tobey Maguire was after when he played Peter Parker and Spider-Man. That was when after he got bit by the spider, Peter Parker did. He tried to make money on it. So he earned $3,000 trying to beat the champ in a wrestling match. And the champ was Randy Savage. And isn't Randy Savage because his hair was much longer, more strung out, His hair was all strong, was all like spaghetti hair, and he was all, twice the size, muscle mass wise, than he was in WWF, when he was in his prime. But then, of course, as soon as they saw him drop the elbow, the flying elbow off the top rope, we knew it was Randy Savage. Isn't that Randy Savage? As I watching the movie for the first time on the first day he came out, and it was Randy Savage. As soon as he got on the mic, like, "Oh, the Bone Store is ready," and I thought he did a terrific job in the Spider-Man movie. I think that was the last real big thing he did, was being in that movie, and he did do an episode of Baywatch with Hogan, Flair, and Ric Flair and Vader. He did a cameo, an episode for that. But I mean, after that, he pretty much left wrestling. I mean, he didn't even do the end. Some wrestlers, big name wrestlers from back in the 80s, who went on the independent circuit, and Savage didn't do that. As soon as he left, he left. I mean, give him credit, he didn't want to prolong his career, or ruin his career by keep wrestling. But in terms of he was long overdue being in the Hall of Fame. And the thing that annoys me is that, as far as I know, up to this point, that Elizabeth is not being inducted with him, as she should be. One of the reasons why he kept out is because then he comes and want to be his whole family be inducted together. Maybe Lenny Poffo, his father, and maybe Elizabeth. But I feel that Elizabeth should be inducted with him. I feel, because the two of them not being going to the Hall of Fame together is really a disgrace. And I don't know if they announced it yet, if he's going to be in there. But the other wrestlers are going to be in the Hall of Fame this year with Macho Man. Is the Bushwhackers, which is like the worst tag team, in WWF history since I've been watching it. Alundra Blaze. You're going to have Larry Zbyszko, I believe will be in this year as well. But not having Elizabeth in there is really pathetic. Guys, come on. So that's my little tribute to Randy Macho Man Savage. Please click on the video, please rate it. Please subscribe to my channel. Please follow my video onto your Facebook pages. And please also check out my other older videos, not only my YouTube channel, Bobcat Joe Gutfeld, but also you can check out my videos on rowdyc.com. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.